Today I'm going to test out the idea that resolution and frame rate affect the autofocus on a Panasonic camera. So basically I'm going to try two resolutions, Full HD and 4K, and 25 frames per second and 50 frames per second I'm going to change. So I'm going to do like 4 tests, walking back and forth just like in the last video and jumping in and out of frame and see how fast the camera reacts. And I'm here at the lovely coastal town of Izola in Slovenia to do this test because I'm here with my family. It's Saturday and yeah, this is probably the only spot in Slovenia that has sunshine. Let's go. Now, as I explained in the last video, Panasonic uses contrast-based depth from defocusing focusing system, which is by default flawed for video. So the idea is the more images the camera gets, the more it can react and adjust the autofocus according to what it's getting from the sensor. Now I'm going to test out 25 and 50 frames per second, and the idea is, of course, that the 50 frames per second are going to give a lot more information, so the autofocus should work a little bit better. But there's also the resolution. So how does Full HD compare to 4K with these two different frame rates? So what I'm kind of expecting is that the 50 frames per second is going to be much better, but I'm not really sure about the resolution because I have no idea if the camera uses the data from the sensor for autofocusing and then processes it and downsamples it to Full HD or whatever, or is it already the processed information that's being used, so the Full HD or the 4K or whatever, and then uses that kind of those images for acquiring autofocus. I have no idea, so I need to test this out. Now I didn't bring my tripod with me, which means I have to improvise a little bit. As you can see, I hope the camera doesn't fall down because that would be like a waste of money. I'll be using the Leica 12 to 60mm f2.8 lens, 2.8 to 4. And I'll be doing the same test as I did in the last video, just walking back and forth and seeing how the camera reacts and how good it tracks my face. I'm also going to do a test where I'm not going to be using focus tracking, just one area focusing, and I'm going to shift the focus from something that's really close to something that's really far and see how fast and accurate the camera reacts to that with different frame rates and with different resolutions. I'll start off with Full HD 25 and then Full HD 50 and then go to 4K 25 and 4K 50. The only difference is going to be that at 4K 50 I'm going to shoot in 8-bit 420, not 10-bit 422, because my camera doesn't record 10-bit 422 4K 50 frames per second internally. Now also you can do this with 24 frames and 60 frames. I'm using 25 and 50 because, you know, it's a pulse system or something like that. I don't know. I just enjoy those frame rates a little bit more. Yeah, start testing. Locking in, just like in the last video. I found that if you lock in, the camera works a little bit better. So I'm just gonna walk back and forth and see how this reacts to me moving around. I'm using face tracking and it's locked, so this is Full HD 25 frames per second. And what I'm mostly interested in is if I stand still, now how the camera hunts for focus in these different frame rates and different resolutions if my face is being tracked and it's locked in. And now you lock your face in by pressing in the joystick on the Lumix G9. This way the autofocus actually works a little bit better. This is now Full HD 50 frames per second and I'm shooting everything at 25mm on the Leica, which means it's 50mm full frame equivalent, and the aperture is, again, just like in the last video, f3.2. This gives me kind of the shallowest depth of field at this focal length. So basically walking back and forth. And I'm using the shotgun microphone this time because, you know, I forgot my Rode Wireless Go, so no sound changes. Now again, I'm mostly interested in how the background is pulsing in and out if I'm standing at about a meter away from the camera with the focal length of 50mm full frame equivalent. Yes, Full HD 50. Okay, so this is 4K 25 frames per second, still in 10-bit 422 chroma subsampling, and I have to adjust my ND filter because I'm shooting 25 frames per second with 1/50th of a second shutter speed and 150 frames per second with 100th of a second shutter speed. This way I'm kind of matching, but I'm playing everything back on a 25 frames per second timeline, which technically means that I could actually use 1/50th of a second shutter speed in every case to get that cinematic motion blur. Now you use a faster shutter speed with faster frame rates to follow the 180 shutter speed rule if you slow your video down, but if you're not slowing the video down, well, then it makes no sense, you know, recording at a higher frame rate. Anyway, I mean, you could use it for autofocus. If there is a difference with a faster frame rate, then, you know, You might use 1/50th of a second with 50 frames per second, and you get the same cinematic look once you play that back on a 25 frames per second timeline. Now, background pulsing, not moving back and forth. And this is now the 4K 50 frames per second in 8-bit 420, so the colors and the image quality might be a little bit different. I'm recording everything with Vlog-L, with a Vlog-L image profile, so Vlog-L kind of requires the 10-bit. It works really bad with 4-bit, with 8-bit, so I don't know how this looks. I mean, you guys can actually see the difference if there is any. So yeah, I don't know how the camera reacts. I mean, I said I'm going to jump in and out of frame, but that's just basically going to lose the lock on my face, which kind of makes no sense, because I think autofocus with face tracking really works better if you have your face locked in compared to just have the camera randomly select faces. So if you guys didn't watch my last video, I'm doing these tests just before the official 2.4 firmware update, which comes to the Lumix G9 on June the 9th, which is very close, about a week or something ahead, and that's going to be like a big autofocus fix. It's going to bring the autofocus on the Lumix G9 to a level of the S5, because they have the same hardware installed on the Lumix G9 as it is on the S5. Well, more or less, the sensor is smaller because the S5 is a full frame camera, but the S5 currently has kind of the best autofocusing that Lumix can provide. At least that's what they say, and they're going to include that just as well in the GH5 Mark II, which I think just came out or is coming out right now. I am, however, looking forward to the GH6, which is coming later this year, and I'm probably gonna buy that camera once it comes out. I just have to justify the extra 2.5 grand of euros to buy that, yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.